Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp the Limp, and I'm here with a special treat for you all today. I have a copy here of Us Victories. This is by, and I hope I'm not gonna mess this up, Dissimula Dazonia. All right, hoping I'm saying that right. I apologize. I know I'm a little off. This game was designed by Sergio Savacki, and this is by the same company that had a recent Kickstarter that I'm got good and bad news about. All right, it was the 1943 to 1945 game. I'll throw a picture up in the corner for you guys. But they did a recent Kickstarter, and he just hadn't got the word out enough. Smaller publisher, not as well known. And I'm trying to work with him, get some other people to work with him a little bit, and they are going to relaunch it because that one looked really good, and I was hoping he was going to get that. So they canceled it, they're going to redo it, and we're going to help him launch it properly. You guys make sure you check it out because I am going to talk about that one again when it comes out. But in speaking to him, he did send me this one so I could help promote some of his other games. And this one is about the Chancellorsville campaign in Virginia during 1863. Now, I've got all of this spread out in front of you because I want to go over a couple of different things. The little scenario I'm going to show them, play a couple of rounds, let you guys see how the base game itself plays. That's where all these little yellow beads are. Okay, so this is where we're really focused. But you're looking at all this and you're going, okay, Gimpy, why you showing me all this? I want you to see how big the game actually is. It has small little scenarios like this, small, easy ones you can play, or you can do the whole campaign. It's going to cover the whole map. Now, this is your base game. This is what you're going to think of when you think of the war game, the hex encounter stuff. But there's so much other stuff in here. And the guy really is reminding me of Star Citizen. Real quick, if you don't know about it, it's the video game that's been in developmental hell forever. Now, that I'm not saying that is a bad thing here, but in the fact that that game, Star Citizen, he's been trying to add in everything possible that anyone could ever want. They had the same idea here. The only difference is they actually delivered on it versus Star Citizen that is just perpetually being developed. It'll never actually get released. This one, there's a game. There's actually something here. Because this game, which is basically a folio game, it's just a plastic envelope game, comes with like 4 games. So that's what I kind of need to show you guys before I go over the scenario, showing all the components, which the components are actually quite nice for what it is. It's very lovely components. Nice map, nice counters, but you guys will see those here in a sec. So the hex encounter, this is one. All right. We're going to show that one here in just a sec. But it also has a little strategic level game as well. And then it has a tactical skirmish game with little cutout counters, front and back, right? Print on nice cardstock, a little battlefield here so you can have some terrain and everything. A little tactical skirmish game that comes with it as well. And then we have a specifically solitaire game that comes with it as well. Now, they all have to do with this specific battle, but they're all different components of the same thing. So there's multiple different ways to play the same game. However, that's not it. When we're looking at the counter sheets for the game, all right, so you're going to have your generic admin counters. I've got a bunch of those punched out. You have your generic counters for your units. These are the typical ones you would imagine seeing in a Civil War type game like this. But he also includes the NATO symbol counters. So if you want to stick to more modern type war game looks, stuff that you're used to, those counters are included as well. Now, these aren't like used in conjunction, used either or, but you have that option. So if you like the NATO version, you can go with that. If you like the little man stick army cavalry looking stuff, you can go with that. It's whichever one you want. So you've got those going for you. And then this extra sheet has to do with some of the other components like the solitaire game and the strategic level game. You're going to be using these counters with that. So I'm showing you all that to say it is kind of like he was going, they probably like this too, or they probably like this too. Let me just include all of it. And like I said, my only difference between the comparison of Star Citizen to this is he actually delivered. The game exists and it has all those extra little components. This, I think, being the main game, the reason you would actually get it, but all the extra components, all the extra little games that come with it are just kind of like icing on the cake. Now, for our purposes, and we're going to zoom down when we start taking a look at it, we are playing the Salem Church scenario. That's what I've got set up on the board right now, so we'll pop down to that. But there are other scenarios as well that are included with the game. And if you want to do the whole campaign, you basically set up all the scenarios all across the map and play the whole thing out. All right, so here we are down at a bird's eye view of the game itself, the main component as I like to think of it. And this is where your action is going to play out. Now, the little yellow beads are mine. I place that out just to help myself differentiate where the active zone of this scenario is. The hexes that the beads are in are included. So everything inside of those and including those is part of the scenario. And this, the Union forces are here at Fredericksburg, and they have to push past the Confederate forces and exit off any hex here on the western side of the scenario. The Confederates have some reinforcements that will come in based on a roll. It gets easier as the turns go by. There's only 3 turns in this scenario, so the Union forces really don't have a whole lot of time to dally. They got to bug out quick as possible. But they will come in depending on a D6 roll. Now, I do have to say you do have to include your own D6s, which is perfectly fine for me because I like my double 6 dice. Use those all the time. Can't recommend them enough. And you can see here on our scenario sheet on turn 17, because this starts on 17 of the turn record track. And that does matter for our purposes. I'll show you why here in just a sec. These forces will come in on a 5 to 6. On turn 18, they'll come on a 4, 5, or 6. And turn 19, they come in automatically. Because again, these guys are trying to get across over here and get the hell out. The Confederate forces have basically fortifications everywhere that they're starting. That's what these red lines and little marks on the map are representing. So they are in a dug-in, entrenched position that the Union forces have to try to push past. Now, when I'm talking about the turns actually mattering, you see up here at the top corner of the map, I've got the turn marker, and it's got so many activation points listed down underneath each. If there's chances of rain, that will also be listed here on the map for us to see, but they also have night turns as well. So for our purposes, this isn't really going to matter all that much because the scenario gives us our specifics on how many people and who we're activating and our command counters, and we don't have to worry about these night turns. But if you are playing the whole campaign, you are going to have to worry about this because you'll have so many day turns. The day's broken up into 4 turns, and then that 5th turn is the entirety of the night, where you can have things like reinforcements for your units, or you can resupply units that have taken step losses, stuff like that. Just as an FYI, up here in the corner, we also have our skirmishes available and losses boxes, which I'll touch on those here in a sec as well. And then also our artillery bombardment chart is here, but it is on the down bottom left side of the map as well. So what I've done is I took one little bowl and I placed the available forces, available things that they have, which is things like skirmishers and fjords, pontoons that you can use on different rivers that do have the fjords. And then our command chits, because this is a reason why I think this game will work very well for solitaire play. It is a command draw system. So just as an example, looking at this, if we were to do our blind draw and we drew out our Sedgwick commander counter, it could be placed anywhere here on the map, and then those little dots there, those little hexes, represent his command range. So all units within that command range that match that color, so are part of that unit, get to activate. And they'll move, shoot, attack, do all their cool stuff that they're going to do. On top of that, though, you do have these detachment counters. These counters allow you to activate units that aren't necessarily part of the activating counter. So this command counter could be drawn, and we have some other units down there that are not this yellow color. So they're not part of Sedgwick's formation. We see we've got mainly Sedgwick, all these yellow forces, but this one's green and this one's green. So we don't have a specific counter to activate them. When we draw that command counter, we can either activate them using that detachment counter that I showed you previously, or both sides also have what's called a independent counter. And you'll notice that it does not have a command range listed down on it. It simply can activate units in its hex and the 6 surrounding hexes. So the command radius is very much smaller in what it can activate, but it does allow you to activate maybe some stragglers or some units that have gotten cut off, stuff like that. So just as our example, let's say we drew this Sedgwick counter. We could place it here, and all the yellow units that are within that 3 hex range, counting out 1, 2, 3, could be activated. Now, we could not activate this stack with the detachment counter. Normally we could, but Sedgwick isn't in range. If we placed it here, though, 1, 2, 3, and put him in that range, then yes, we would be able to activate him as well. We would have to put the detachment counter on him. These counters cannot be attacked, all right? So they're just on the board. They'll remain on the board until the end of the turn, and then they all get scooped back up and put back in the cup to be. But that is why I think this game really lends itself well to the solitaire play, because you really have to have that randomness. You have to be able to not predict every single turn. And with this, you never know who's going to activate next. It could be Confederate, it could be Union, back and forth. Maybe all the Union forces get activated first and they get a chance to try to push past, or maybe they don't. And you have to worry about the locations of your units because you've got to try to keep them in that command range. It very much reminds me of A Most Fearful Sacrifice in that you benefit from keeping your units adjacent to each other. That also comes into play when it comes to combat, because when you conduct an attack, you have to attack everyone that is adjacent to you if they're an enemy. Now, there are some exceptions to that. Things like certain terrain that you're in can change that to where you don't have to attack everyone. But generally speaking, you do have to attack whoever's around you. Now, to briefly go over the combat, you'll notice I have not shown you guys a combat results table, and that's because there isn't one. This game is simply done off of your D6 rolls, right? And all you're looking for is to compare the two sides' combat ratios to get a number. Let's say the attacker's 2 and the defenders are 1. You get a ratio of 2 to 1. In that case, the attackers would be rolling 3 die and the defenders would be rolling 1 die. It's whatever your combat ratio is plus 1 die. Now, there are effectors like terrain, things like that can change the amount of dice, but generally that's what you're looking at. And there are other modifiers like elite units can modify the results of the dice. But generally speaking, you're going to get your combat ratio, add 1 die to it, roll, and then you're looking for 5s and 6s to determine how many wounds that you've inflicted. The defender does have the option to retreat 1 hex to absorb one of the losses, one of the step losses, if they want to. However, if they retreat from an entrenched position, so if they've got a breastworks or a fortification and they decide to retreat, then they become disorganized. So it can be a drawback to retreat from these fortified positions. Looking at our terrain effects chart here, it lists down all our different types of terrain, calls for movement, and then one of the things you have to specifically look at here is the combat effect, because it might have a maximum allowed set of dice. No matter how high your attack factor is, you'll only be able to get so many dice. Or it might affect bombardment, because bombardment can be done by your artillery units, but if they attack in the bombardment phase, they're not allowed to attack during combat. So they can't double dip, so to speak. You can't bombard and then attack with them generally. Now, they do get to just attack in combat like regular units if they have not done a bombardment. Okay, so you're thinking combat sounds kind of simple? Well, it's not so simple because there's a couple of things that get added into it. That's your breastworks and your skirmishers. You're going to have a limited amount of skirmishers depending on what scenario you're playing, and or if you're playing the campaign, you get to use all of them. But these will go away over time as you take losses to them. What this is basically a free step you get to add down. For our scenario here, the Confederate forces get 2 skirmishers and the Union forces get 3. When you are attacked, you can place down a skirmisher and you have the option of placing down a breastworks. This gets you an extra little combat factor, this gets you some defense, but like I said, that breastworks can be devastating to you and cause you to become disorganized if you take the retreat option out of it. So if you know you're going to lose the combat, maybe the breastworks isn't what you want to do. Or maybe you want to do it to try to reduce the losses as much as possible. It's your choice to make. When it comes to the skirmishers, like I said, they're going to be limited, but you're going to place them in those losses boxes. And then at the end of each round, you can get your skirmishers back. However, you get them back -1 unless there's only one loss. So if you only have a single skirmisher that's been taken out, you get that single skirmisher back. But if you have 2 in there, 2 or more, then you would get whatever amount is in there -1. So over the course of a campaign, you're going to have fewer and fewer skirmishers that are able to help you out because you're taking losses to your forces. The only other thing that I haven't really addressed when it comes to combat is the elite status. Now, that number in there in that little white circle designates a unit's elite status. So what that means is they get to pick if they want to add a modifier to their combat dice. And that can be a +1, -1, whatever they're doing, defending, attacking. But they have to pick what roll it is. So say you're defending and you're getting to roll 3 dice. You would have to say, if you decide to use that combat bonus, that I'm using that on the first roll. Okay, if you're just rolling a bunch of dice with no modifiers, you can roll them all together. But if you do have some modifiers, you have to call which die is getting the modifier. You don't get to hold on to that modifier and wait to see what your rolls are first and then apply the modifier. And the modifiers can be cumulative if you have units stacked together. Also, when it comes to stacking, you can stack up to 4 friendly units together. However, they can't exceed 16 as their combat value. Combat value being on the left, movement value being on the right. So generally 4 units will be able to do it, but you do have some 5 strength power units here. You couldn't do 4 of those. That would be too much and go over your 16-point limit. So that's pretty much the basics of the game. Now, of course, I've glossed over a lot of it. I don't want to get into every single little thing because I'll be talking forever about it. But combat is relatively streamlined, but there is a fair amount of nuance in play, especially when you have to decide whether or not you're adding those skirmishers, whether or not you're adding breastworks, whether or not you're going to take the retreat option, where you're going to apply your elite bonuses. All that type of stuff will come into play. All right, so for our scenario that we're going to play through, and like I said, we're probably not going to play through the whole thing, but I want to let you guys get an example of the game. We don't have to worry about rain, so we can ignore that part. And we've just got a few counters of activation to worry about. So just our little area here. The way the game's going to play out is you will pull a counter. You'll set wherever you're going to place your counter. You'll do the movement with those units. And then you'll do your artillery bombardment and then any combat afterwards. Now, in that rule that I was talking about previously, about having to attack everyone around you, that does come into play. But if an enemy unit is already engaged with someone else, one of the other friendly forces, you are allowed to basically pick. So if we've got 2 counters here, they're both engaged against these guys, you could do 1-to-1, 1-to-1. You wouldn't have to do 1-to-2 on both of those. So let's play through a round, see how the game works. We have to roll for our reinforcements, if they're going to be on the map or not, or allowed to come on the map this turn. Looking for 5 or 6. Got a 2, so they're not coming on. Don't have to worry about them. I'm just going to leave them stacked here to the side for now. But remember, they will come on turn 3 no matter what happens. All right, so let's stir them up and get all these counters nice and mixed up, and we'll draw ourselves a counter. And we've got a independent full of Confederates. Remember, this one can activate anyone, but it can only activate ones in its hex and the 6 surrounding. And looking at this, I should have placed the artillery in different positions. I could have worked that out a little better, but it does have specific spots. All right. So when you're looking at this, whatever units are in those hexes, so these two go in those 2 hexes, you couldn't put 2 in one hex. You have to fill both hexes, same like down here. But if I place the artillery better, I could have had 1 artillery there, 1 artillery there, place the activation there, get to activate them both. Yep. If I had had this artillery placed there, I could have got them both with a single counter. No, it's not that big of a deal because these guys are all part of the, which one is that? It is Early's activation, so all these units can activate together. It's not the biggest deal, but I would have liked to have activated both artilleries to get some bombardment going on. All right, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to place this. Well, that's a yellow one. I'm not moving any of the Confederate units because they all start off in a fortification and I want them to stay there. But remember, it's directional. It's only fortification in that direction. So if they're attacked from the back, it's not going to do them any good. So that Union unit right there might be able to do some good if he can get in their back lines. But I guess we'll just go right here because I'm simply just activating that artillery, not moving him, not doing anything else, just doing a bombardment with him. And that is clear terrain. That is clear terrain. He can do a bombardment up to 2 hexes away, but terrain definitely matters. Because when we look at it here on the bombardment chart, it can have bad modifiers. Now, since the artillery table is down off to the side, I'll throw a picture of it up in the corner so you guys can see what I am referencing. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do here is, and let's pull these around, you have to pick what type of target you're going after. Either artillery or you can go after the infantry and cavalry. They only have one artillery, I believe. I think the rest of them are infantry. So let's try to hurt their artillery so they don't get to bombard me back because that would suck. But they are in a empty terrain hex. It's just a road, so you're just going to reference whatever is there. So it's clear terrain. My thought is, do I throw up a breastworks or not? And I think in this case, there's no reason not to throw up a breastworks. It'll get them a modification. So we'll throw a breastworks on them. We'll just set it here to the side to recognize the fact that there is a breastworks in that hex, giving them some defense. So basically what the breastworks is doing is it's canceling out the clear terrain because clear terrain is going to give them +1 and the breastworks will give them -1. And then we just roll the d6 determined based on the combat factor of the artillery being 2. So there is a good chance we can do something on this. It's either going to cause a disorganization, a step loss, or disorganization and a step loss. All right, so let's roll for our attack, see what we're going to get. And we got a 3. No, 3's a miss. We needed a 4, 5, or 6 to cause something. So that is no good. Damn, that sucks. Well, that is unfortunate. Now we got to get stuck in with the other one. All right, so let's shake it up and draw ourselves another counter here. And we got ourselves another independent. Okay. Well, we're not getting our big ones to start off with. We'll do our little stuff. I'm going over here because this one, I definitely want to try to get this guy stuck in. Only problem is the Union forces only have a single pontoon to use, but I think that's the only place I'm going to try to use it. That's a minor river. To cross the big rivers here, the Rapinoe and Rapanda, whatever they're called, you have to have a pontoon at a ford. And I think that's going to be the only place I really need to use it. The rest of these are minor rivers. all the way along through here. So they could get across those, but he can't get across that unless he fords it, yeah, basically with a pontoon. So we're going to do that. We're going to lay down his pontoon so he can cross. All right, so by doing so, I can cross him onto the road, and that's a minor road, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to end him here. I would rather go in this direction, but I think try to get something going on over there. Now, that attack is actually going to work pretty well for him. So he's moving, and now he's attacking in this direction. Should probably mark which ones I'm finished with. All right, I do need to put a fired on the artillery on both of these to remember the fact that I have fired those. And I'm just doing that to remember that I've activated him. Now, he's got a combat factor of 3. He's attacking a 5. That breaks down into 1 to 1.5. So you will round down. So it's a 1 to 1. So they're both getting a single die, and then they're getting the +1. So it's a 2-die attack for both. He's in a fortification, but he doesn't get the fortification bonus because of the location of the attack. The attack's coming in from the rear. But, ooh, there's actually a slope here and a sloping down. Let's see if that's going to affect it. Ah, he's actually getting a bonus. He's doing good. He's getting to attack down into him. And because he's attacking down, he's getting a 1-die bonus. They both have a single elite status, so they get to add a +1 to their attack. Ultimately, the Union forces get to roll 3 die, and the Confederates get to roll 2 die. Problem is he can't really retreat, because he can retreat next to an enemy, but where would he go? He would probably just have to eat the step losses, because I wouldn't really want to retreat him any other direction. All right, let's figure this out here. His 3-die attack, I'm going to apply the +1 to this blue die. All right, now let's roll it and see what he gets. +1, that pops that up to a 5, and he got a 6. Now, a 6, when it comes to this, there is a rule to it that if you get a natural 6, and this is optional, you can pick your target, okay? So, since he's attacking a single unit, doesn't matter. He's effectively done, and wow, that worked out really well for him. He's done 2 hits. That's enough to kill him unless he retreats, so I guess I'm going to have to retreat with him. Let's roll for his attack, and we'll do the same thing. Roll our 2 die here, and we will apply his +1 to the blue die to see what he's going to get back. And that's cocked, even though it was a 6. Oh, I got to roll it again. Oh, he got the 6 twice. You some punk. Wow, okay. That actually worked out amazingly. That's going to be enough to kill him. So I guess it doesn't matter that he activated. I could have deployed skirmishers, but I didn't for such a small fight. I didn't think it would matter. If I had deployed skirmishers, they could have eaten some of these step losses. But as it is, the Union forces are wiped out completely, and he has to take a step loss and retreat. I will retreat him down because he can retreat adjacent to an enemy, but the enemy got destroyed anyway, but it moved him out of his fortification. So there you see the basics of how combat works. You're looking for 5s and 6s, and you're applying your bonus die where you can, and you just have to make sure you call which die that you're applying it to. Wow, that attack worked out interestingly, but it did break a hole open for them. They could scoot around this way, maybe move their forces around and try to flank down. The Confederates are going to have to push back up and try to take that up, but that's only going to work if they get to activate next. All right, so I went and grabbed my tweezers to make it a little bit easier. I switched a couple of things because I realized I brain farted when I put the fired marker on the Union artillery. They hadn't fired yet. And I did place a disorganized marker on these guys because they retreated, but they retreated from a fortification. Same thing as retreating from a breastworks, so they do become disorganized. Disorganized isn't a huge penalty when they activate. As long as they don't move, do anything, they can take it off, or if you have a night turn. But if they get But if something else happens that would cause another disorganization, when they're disorganized already, then they'll become demoralized, which does incur further penalties. All right, so let's look away and draw for our counter here. And we got ourselves a early. Focus in. We got green Confederates, basically, which, again, I need Union because Union needs to activate. So it really doesn't matter where I put this guy. He has a command radius of 2, which means 2 hexes out. Green is pretty much these 4 down here at the bottom. There is 1 up there at the top. I should have set him a little bit further south if I was thinking about it, but not a huge deal. I think for us, the only thing we can really do here is probably just place it right there in between them to activate all of those guys. But again, none of them are moving because I don't want to move them out of their fortifications. I'm really only placing it there so I can conduct a artillery attack against these infantry over here. And again, we will place a breastworks on these guys because we want to try to get them a little bit of a defense since they're out in the open. They're taking some artillery fire. Oh, actually, I can't target them. I have to target someone else. They're 1 hex out of range doing our bombardment. So we'll go for those instead. This will stack a 2 right here. And we'll, same thing, breastworks right there next to them. So we can target them with the bombardment. Bombardment just, oh, so short, only 2 hexes. But there's a lot you can do in 2 hexes. All right, so again, we're looking for a 4, 5, or 6 since the breastworks is canceling out the open terrain. And we will roll, see what we get. And oh my God, they got a 6. All right, that's going to mess them up. I think that is going to be a disorganization and a step loss. And I'm kind of curious. I don't think the 6 applies in this. Do they get to pick the target? Do they get to pick the target? I think it says for all attacks. It really doesn't matter since both of those are there. I don't believe they can retreat back there. No, they're just going to have to both become disorganized, and one of them is going to take a step loss. So we'll flip him over. He's still relatively decent, and I'll place a disorganized on both of them. So we know which one it was. Which was it? It was this one that was being targeted. Damn. All right. Disorganized for both. And that is going to matter. And this is part of the reason I actually like this game is that I kept wanting the Union to draw because I need them to move forward so I can show a big attack going on. But now that the artillery has fired, if they had done something up here, it would have been a little bit better. But these guys being disorganized means that they don't get to jump in on that attack. So they're actually weakened. They can attack, but these guys can't. So they're going to have to basically hang where they are so they can lose that disorganized marker. All right, and what we still have in here, we have McLaws, the yellow guys, and detachment. We still have a detachment and Sedgwick. So basically their whole set of forces. All right, looking away, and what do we get? Okay, we finally got it. We got Sedgwick. All right, let's see where we put him. He's got a range of 3, so I can pretty much put him anywhere and get them all. Okay, let me think about this because I want to try to get him to. If I place the counter, damn, I want to get the bottom ones. If I place it there, nope. He has to be there. 1, 2, 3 to get up to there. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay, perfect. If I place it right here, I can activate the whole line, including using a detachment marker. So that's what we're going to do because I want to activate everyone. We'll place it here on this breastworks. Although since, we'll do a bombardment first with the artillery. So we'll leave the breastworks in there so the artillery will be defendable. And place a detachment marker here. And again, I'm not placing it directly on the unit. That way you guys can see who's there. But by doing this, by placing his marker here, it gives me a 3 hex command range. So 1, 2, 3 up to there. 1, 2, 3 down to there. So I can get the whole line by placing it here because all these guys are yellow. They're all part of his corps. They're all part of his group with the exception of him. But Because I'm detaching, he can go, and we do our movement, then we do our artillery bombardment, and then we do our attacks. Now, if we leave a hex that has breastworks in it, the breastworks are taken off the board, but this artillery is going to bombard, which means he's going to stay where he is. So that breastwork's going to stay, and these guys are disorganized, so they're not going to move in for an attack anyway. So this line's going to kind of get some bonuses. We're going to leave them there to remove the disorganization. So we're just moving these bottom three and this middle group and this top guy. And we're going to try to work it in a way that we can get them all. If we take this group and move them there, move him here. Oh, great. I got 2 up there. I'll be damned. Look at that. Can we fit them all? Yes, we can. That is just 16. Sweet. We got one big attack going here in this one hex. Because remember, that detachment marker is right there on top of them. But actually, let me check that. I don't remember specifically if it's 1 unit or 1 hex of a unit. Okay, I am right. It activates all of those guys. So I can activate both. That gives me a 16. 16 against his 4. I'm specifically moving them there. Because if I move them there, that divides out their attack. Although, I could divide it. This one's already disorganized. And did he have a step loss? Yeah. I'll tell you what, let's do that. Let's have the green guys go here. And since they're engaging there, they're engaging there, that divides up the attack, so they're not having to attack all in one direction. They are attacking up slope, and they're attacking fortifications here. But he got knocked out of his fortification. So he's not getting that bonus. He is. It's a weaker attack, but still pretty good. And let's see. We've got a couple of guys here. 8. And can I move them somewhere? Okay, we're going to try to mess up the Confederate lines. I want to engage in very specific ways. By splitting my guys off, it's kind of a problem because when I go to activate them later, the command range is going to be stretched a little far by not keeping them together. But I'm hoping it'll pay off by causing as much damage to the Confederates as possible. So attacking here in this direction. So attack here, attack here, attack here. And let's see. This breastworks was there. Sedgwick was there. And that artillery is doing bombardment. And he could probably bombard there, since I'm probably not going to have attack going there. They've got a movement range. And maybe I push them south. Okay, so yeah. Good plan. Good plan, Gippy. Let's go here. And we'll combine their attacks. So that's 13. So that'll get them a 3-1. And we can take these disorganized off because these guys are not moving during this activation. So I'm not getting any bonus out of them this time. But that means I do get to remove those disorganized that they got. Don't get to use them on the attack, but that's all right. Although if I put Sedgwick here or there, he could still reach out. He's got a good command range, so I could still get them all. All right, cool. Sorry, I'm working on my strategy. I'm kind of enjoying this. We've got our bombardment to do. And I think we're just going to let these attacks run, and we'll try to hit their center as well. He's got fortifications. He'll be defended. I can't reach this artillery, but we're attacking that one. So try to get this infantry. They're relatively strong. If they can get knocked back or forced to retreat, that'll open up a hole that might be able to be exploited by these guys depending on how their attacks work. They've got more units so they can combine their strengths, but they are attacking into fortifications, which is horribly bad because it's a guaranteed step loss. And I think this organization as well, because they're attacking into those improved positions. But we'll see how this plays out. Okay, this is going to be brutal. Actually, it's not too bad. He's getting knocked down one step. So he's just rolling where the other one would roll. He's firing here, trying to cause some hurt to the Confederates. So he is looking for a 4, 5, or 6, I believe. Because he's getting a -2 on there. And let's see if there's anything else on this chart. Actually, the best he can get is a 4. He's got the high strength artillery, but he is getting a -2 to it. So it's possible he could get a step loss, but he'd have to roll a 6 here. And he gets a 1, so that's nothing. That's crap. That didn't work for him. Oh well. But it's worth a shot. Now we've got to do our attacks, and we'll run them top to bottom here. Remember, move, artillery bombardment, and then whatever attacks you got lined up. And in this game, it's kind of like, Sacred Oil and a Most Fearful Sacrifice as well. You really want to plot out those attacks so you don't get yourself spread out. He's disorganized, but he gets to defend as normal. I would expect more from Woods, but it's only a max of 5 die. So that's not too big of a deal. And that is, 6 to 4? Was that 3 to 2? Is going to be the combat modifiers there. Bonuses, do they get bonus 1? Nope, just 1. So they're doing 3 to 2. They get the +1 because everyone gets the +1 to bump it up. It keeps it from being just single die a lot of time in the combat odds. So the 3 to 2 is going to bump to a 4 to 3. So 4 die for the attackers, 3 die for our defenders. And let me grab out the right die. Actually, all right, let's do it this way. I am going to do his +1 on one of his last dice rolls. So there's his first 2. He got a 4 and a 6. That's actually pretty good. And for his last roll, it's going to be on this neon green die for the +1. S6. He's killed. He's dead. Nothing to even roll for at that point. So 2 losses. Even with a retreat, being disorganized, there's nothing he can do. He's still going to get a step loss, so the Confederates are dead. But they do get their attack. It is simultaneous. He gets a +1. So the green die again will get his +1. Oh, so bad. Not good for him. They only got a single 1, and it's not one that they get to pick. And it has to be a natural 6. Can't be a modified 6 to get the choice. Confederate, go bye-bye. He die. Bye-bye, buddy. They eat 1 automatic loss due to the... it's not a fortification. It's not a fortification. I was thinking it was. So they only take a single loss, and we will move them up. Advance after combat. And we will eat that 1 loss on the one that is not elite. All right, so that's first attack done. Second attack is 10 to 4, so that's going to be a 2 to 1. All right, so 2 to 1 +1, so we've got the 3 attacker dice versus 2 defender dice. But the defenders, I believe, get 1 extra die, flat out for being in the fortification. Yes, 1 combat die, automatic step loss. Okay, so they're going to eat 1 automatic loss, and it is going to be a 3 to 3 dice-wise, simply due to that fortification. Do they have any elites? The Union has 1 elite that they get to call, but he is not elite. So, same thing, neon green die for the Union will get his +1. Oh, and it doesn't do good, but they got 2 6s on that. That is brutal. Oh, they get to pick. He could lose 1 by retreating. Ooh, and he's in fortification. He will be disorganized. The Confederates are eating it. Okay, same thing. Green die. Wait, he does not get a +1. So just flat out roll. Oh, and they get 2 6s plus the 1 that they have to eat, which means 3, and he gets to pick where these 2 go, which he is automatically going to pick the elite to eat both of those, leaving this one with 1 loss to accept, and means he has to take a loss and retreat and become disorganized. Let me grab a disorganized counter for him, which means the Union can advance up, and he definitely will, because they have to get across this map as quickly as possible. The attacks are brutal in this one. Dice are going good. All right, this attack's going to be a lot harder because it is only artillery. They do have the elite status. They do get the +1, but they only have a combat factor of 2. And unlike other games where your artillery doesn't get to attack normally, they just made it easy. They just defend normally, just like any other unit in combat like this. So 8 to 2. 8 to 2 is going to be what? I'm brain farting at 4 to 1. Damn. 4 to 1, and it's max 5 die anyway. Is he in woods? What is he in? Nope, he's in clear. Does not matter. That's going to be 4 to 1, so it's 5 to 2 dice, with the Confederates getting a +1 and the Union having to eat 1 flat out. All right, 5 die for the Union. See what they got going on. Ooh, 2 6s. And that. Even if they retreat, there's nothing they can do. Union forces are destroyed. That is 3 losses. So, what did they get? They got 2 dice, right? Yep. 2 dice is what they get to roll, with a +1 on one of them. So we'll do our usual. Green die gets a +1. Oh, weak sauce. Nothing back. So they only have to eat a single loss. That is so horrible. The Confederates have just been brutalized during this turn. All right, they're going to move forward. I do think my strategy of combining forces and going in on them was the way to go. The bombardments haven't really done much, but these attacks did great. Cleared it out. The Confederates are down to 1 remaining troop. Now, they got roughly even forces, but the Confederates start with a good chunk of theirs back there. But all their other guys are up here by the fortifications, which means fortifications have to try to hold. But now they're flanked. They're in for a world of hurt. All right, down here, we've got, what is that, 13? Yeah, 13 to 4. So that's 3 to 1. 3 to 1 is going to be 4 to 2. He's getting a +1, and the Union is getting a +1. All right, so for the Union, green die getting a +1 on their attack. Ooh, turns it to a 6, and that is their only one that does damage. Now, remember, it's not natural 6, so they don't get to pick. Would be the defender's choice, but there's only a single counter there. But they can choose to eat that in a retreat, which I do believe they are going to do, which will make them disorganized, but they're still alive, and they still have some defense. Do I maybe move them up? No, we'll take it back to the woods. They will be moving up, but let's see how many of them are going to be moving up. So what was that attack? 3 to 1, so 4 to 2. So they get 2. And one of them is going to be a +1, which again will be our green die. Oh, weak. And we'll re-roll this blue one since it was cocked pretty bad. 3. Yep. They whiffed, which means they only have to eat a single loss. Just 1 step loss on the Union forces, and they will advance after combat. Good grief, they have come out swinging. I know I've gone long-winded on this. We're going to end our example of play because that was a good amount of combat that I wanted to show you guys. Key things that I left out that I didn't talk about too much. Don't forget you've got your skirmishers. I kind of wanted to hold on to these as far as the scenario goes for later on in the turn. I probably should have used them more since I didn't anticipate this combat going quite as badly as it had, but the Confederates would have lost both of their skirmishers. They're key to throw in when you need that 1 extra combat factor to swing it so you're not at such a big loss. Maybe you're getting ready to be, 3 to 1. Maybe that 1 extra combat factor will knock you down to it's 2 to 1 instead of 3 to 1, taking away one of those dice that the Union get or the opponent get. Actually, the Confederates should have rolled 1 extra die there, I believe, because of the fortification. I forgot. Let's roll for it real quick. 2, still a whiff. Ha! They still miss. But I think of these as just that valuable resource, especially in a smaller scenario like this. If the Confederates lost both of their skirmishers, they'd only get 1 back on the next turn, and then they'd have 1 single skirmisher to hold on to. So you really want to use those guys in key moments when that 1 combat factor can make a difference on how the combat can play out, really swing those factors. But as far as combat goes, I do like the fact that it's relatively simplified. You don't have to worry about all the combat results table. You're not going through the dice. Okay, Sometimes you're in the mood for something very crunchy, like a most fearful sacrifice, where you're rolling 3 dice. All 3 dice matter. All are individually calculated. Then you have to worry about your cohesion. I love the game. Don't get me wrong. Love it. One of my absolute favorites. Very, very, very awesome. But you're not always in the mood for that. So this can let you have that same type of feel without having to go to all the trouble. No combat results table to worry about. The only player aid you got to deal with is train effects chart just to know what the modifiers are. Other than that, everything you need to know is on the table and on the counters. Get the ratio, add one to each, and then any possible modifiers they get to add because of their elite status or the terrain effects chart. Other than that, you're pretty good. I think I might have missed one or two from the fortifications, but it's really not that big of a deal. I've always found with games like this that when you miss a modifier here or there, you'll miss one in this direction and then the other direction, and it all balances out by the end of the game. So overall, I'm rating this game based off of this game. All right, I haven't spent a whole lot of time with the other components. There's just so much that comes in this, but I do believe this game is worth it for this alone. All right, so everything else that comes in the packet, the tactical, the strategic, the solitaire, the NATO counters, all that's gravy. Right, that's just icing on the cake to a fun, streamlined game that you can play scenario, or you can play the whole damn campaign, play it out, do all 25 turns, and see how it plays out. Big thing really comes into this river. I'm always messing these up. How do you pronounce these? The Rappahannock. Think of the Rappahannock River and the Rapid River, whichever ones. These big major ones, they have huge swings that come into play. The Union forces get a lot of help in the fact that they've got 6 pontoons they can use to cross the river, try to bring the fight to the Confederates. The Confederates only have one, but they do have a chance to capture some of these Union pontoons so they can use it to push their way north if they want to. Big thing for me is I really like the way these command counters work. The fact that you're placing it down, you're worrying about your command ranges, and it gives you that incentive to focus your troops, keep them together, have a cohesive battle plan, because if you start just stretching yourself all the hell out, you can have some problems. Because like I was saying, these Union forces, they did pretty good on these attacks, and they actually did good because they were able to push down just a little bit instead of straight over. But now they've got this huge gap in their lines because these guys were disorganized, right? So there's this huge spot that can be, well, possibly exploited by the Confederate forces, although I doubt that's going to happen. They got raffle stomped up here. Dice gods didn't like them too much. But you do have to try to keep those forces together. You got to stay cohesive, similar again to a most fearful sacrifice. But in this, it's just simplified into the fact that you've got a command range and you got to stay within it. But you get a little bit of exception there with your detachment counters or your independent counters that you can use to reach out there and get some of those stragglers that might have wandered off just a little bit. And again, key thing for me is stuff like that chip pull mechanic to cause the activations really does lend itself to solitaire play, because you're not going to know what's going to happen between this turn and the next. They're all going to have that variability for you. Yeah, so overall, give Us Victories, I've been very pleased with. Components are nice. I really like these paper maps. They are a thicker card stock. It's kind of hard to show you guys on here, but very nice. And the fact that it's durable enough that, yes, it's going to have to be folded when it's shipped to you, but you don't get those little white creases, right, from the folds. You don't get those. You're going to have to smooth it out just like you get the rest of them, but it's durable enough to withstand. And it's not glossy, so I'm not getting a whole lot of shine from my lights, and it's a very nice looking map as well. The counters themselves are a little bit thinner than some of the others. They're the white core instead of the brown core that we see in some other games, but that's never bothered me. The first war games I ever got were white core, so white core, brown core, doesn't matter. As long as it's thick enough to play the game, they look good on the table. You are going to have to counter clip these. These are not pre-rounded. I did clip all of these, but once you're done clipping them, they look fantastic. No cards to worry about in the game. Rest of it's player aids, your standard card stock, all perfectly serviceable, very nice quality for what you're paying for the game. And like I said, the rest of the components are all icing on what is very nice cake here. So, like I said, if this interests you, check them out. This publisher, because I can't say it and I don't want to insult him by trying. Definitely some cool stuff that he is working on putting out. I like it when some smaller independent publishers are trying new stuff, because all the other big names, Compass, Lock and Load, GMT, they all have a feel. All their games feel very similar and familiar. Yes, the games can play out different, but you can almost look at a GMT game and know what it is. You can look at a Compass game and know that it's a Compass game. I like some of these smaller independent publishers because they try new things. They have that independent feel to them. And stay tuned, because like I said, that 1943, 1945 game, I am really going to push to try to help him get that to succeed. I really want it to succeed. Looks like a fun game, and I would like to see that hit its funding goal. And it doesn't have a big goal. Again, I don't think it had anything to do with the quality of the game. I think it just didn't have enough press coverage of it before he went to Kickstarter. But we're going to work on that. We're going to fix that so the next time he kicks ass. All right, but that's going to be it for me for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Put in your comments, questions below, and make sure you check out Instagram, because TheGimpyGamer is on Instagram now. Go check it out. I always am posting up upcoming videos, pictures, stuff I'm working on, and even promotions that companies have going on. So potential to win some stuff. All right, you guys take care. I'll catch you in the next one.